Okay, everybody, it is Wednesday, June 24th, 2026, and welcome to the meeting of the Southborough Historical Commission. Um, I'm Kevin Miller, the chair, along with Vice Chair Grant Farrington, Treasurer Annie Pfaff, and members Kelly O'Brien and Michelle Hokinson. It is a gala evening, like I um, mentioned before we started recording, because we've got all kinds of interesting and good news tonight, and so I'm really anxious to get on with it. Um, so let's go. The first thing we've got is the Historical House Sign Program. We've got four applications to review, and I'm delighted with all these applications, and I think we're going to be able to get through them fairly quickly. The first one, I just listed these by sending numbers, which didn't really make a lot of sense, but that's what I did, is 7 Lattisquama. 7 Lattisquama Road is a craftsman bungalow that sits within the boundaries inside the Southborough Center Historic District. This is an interesting one. There's actually going to be a theme emerging tonight in several of the items that we have, as well as with these historic house sign program. And it has to do with conflicts between Patriot Properties and the Macris database, and also the Sudbury Reservoir system, believe it or not. It's really interesting. But with regard to 7 Lattisquama Road, Patriot Properties has the house is 1936, which I think is an error. Um, the National Register of Historic Places registration form, which covers the district, that's the massive, document um, concerned with our National Register district that, runs to some, my goodness, how many pages is it? Um, and it's really, was obviously very thoroughly researched and vetted. That lists the house as circa 1915. So there's quite a discrepancy there, very interesting, like a 21-year discrepancy. But there's a reason for that, which I'll get to quite quickly. This is let me bring up a photo of the house for you, and I'm going to give you my desktop share, and oh, let me get rid of that and bring up the house. Can you see that?
Yes.
Are you guys getting that? Getting the a
Yeah.
good view of that? That's the house from the street view. Um, and this is a house as typical of 100-plus-year-old house. It's had some alterations and additions. Toward the back, there's a garage. You can see there on the left side. Um, the additions are at the back, but one of the wonderful things about this house is that um, although sided and like interestingly, there's some replacement windows here, but these are the original pattern. So they were replaced, in other words, with a good deal of sensitivity. This is these four vertical panes over a 4/1s, but with vertical panes. You see that that was very much the style in 1915 when this house was built. It still has the Tuscan, what they call Tuscan colonnettes um, at the front porch, um, the original front door. It's still that, and this wonderful sort of gabled facade dormer is really quite nice in the front, and it really retains its original visual integrity. Um, in the Southborough Center Historic District, again, National Register coverage, there's an interesting story connected to this house. That says that the bungalow at 7 Lattisquama Road was probably built about 1915. And so it's listed as circa 1915 in the coverage, in the inventory, on land owned by Edward Collins of 9 Lattisquama Road. That's the house to the left of the one you see, of the subject house you see in the picture. Um, and that Collins had acquired the land in 1905, adding to his own property, built the house that you see here in circa 1915. And then in 1935, Collins and his sister sold 7 Lattisquama Road, again, the house that we're looking at, to Catherine E. Gralton. And there's actually a later coverage of Gralton I thought was very interesting. And I have that indexed. Let me see if I can bring this up real quick for you. It'd be kind of interesting to look at. Um, yeah, it says that, well, let me see it. Yeah, Catherine E. Gralton bought the house from Collins in 1935. An unmarried woman employed as a stenographer in a paper mill, Catherine lived with her retired parents. Her father had been a chauffeur at Deerfoot Farm and 4 lodgers in 1940. So you have a really nice, tasty little, details about ownership of this house. And so it is listed in the National Register coverage as the Collins Collins dash Gralton, Gralton house, circa 1915. So this is one where, the coverage is so good. Um, Let me take off the screen share for a second. That the house clearly, well maintained, visual integrity from the street. Original elements, very clearly present. That the wonderful facade and those colonnettes and all that stuff, and even issues, things that were replaced, like the windows were done in a historically um, faithful manner. So to me, this is a very easy one. So any questions or comments about this one? And again, because the coverage is so rock solid on this one sitting in the National Register District, I didn't have any doubt um, the 1936 date in Patriots Properties is, you see the way that sometimes lags on the sale, but that there seems to be very good documentation that Collins built the house in circa 1915, which is the way I would propose we list it. So, my proposal would be that we approve this as the Collins Gralton House circa 1915. And with that, I open it to comment. Anybody, Grant, anything?
No, nothing to add. I think it's, yeah, worthy of a sign, and I don't have any, I agree with the phrasing and everything, so I think that works.
Okay, Annie,
Likewise, seems pretty straightforward.
great. Kelly, anything? No, good. Michelle?
No, nothing. Actually, I have to tell you, the inside of the house is untouched, so it's a beautiful house.
Yeah, I've seen. Yeah, I know it as well, and can vouch for that. So that's a really nice added. Although that has nothing to do with our
Yeah.
determination.
Yes.
It's a nice thing to know.
Yes.
So great. Someone make a motion then to approve the Collins Gralton House circa 1915 under the Historic House Sign Program.
So moved.
Great. Is there a
Okay.
second? Second. Oh, so motion by Grant, second by Annie. Roll call vote. Miller's aye. Grant,
Aye.
Annie,
Yes.
Kelly,
Aye.
Michelle.
Yes.
5-0. Done. Second one. This gets even better because, and let us say this is gonna, this is Kelly's last meeting with us, and I'm so delighted to have this news to report because a lot of this is goes to Kelly's hard work on this one, and I will say that with Kelly's hard work and research, I believe I have cracked the nut on 24 East Main, and as you
Uh,
know, this is one that has vexed us for a year. I'm very sad to say. So I think the owner is going to be utterly delighted when we get to this. So I want to bring this house up again just to remind you what it is very quickly. Um, Let me get it bigger. Can you see that?
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yes.
That's 24 East Main. Now, this is one of these funny ones where Macris, eh, that's somewhat, um, it just doesn't feel right, but we understand that it simply means a vernacular house, that they call it no style. Um, and they had listed it as, um, interestingly, as when you look at it, circa 1890s. In other words, it's a real fudge job because that could mean through the parameters of what the circa represents, right, is about a 5-year range. It could be 1885 to 1905, you know? Um, and if you recall, the issue that we were having was the confusion between um, this home and number 26. And number 26, which Kelly did the deed research on both of these properties, and did a really good job. And I can't tell you how difficult it is to do actually online. Kelly shrugs it off and goes, "Well, it wasn't a big deal," but I find it quite challenging. It's tricky. You got to get into the hang of it, I would say. And then, of course, you get to these handwritten documents that you got to read all this loopy script, and it does help to have a large monitor to make your way through this stuff. Anyway, if you recall, there's individual coverage in the Macris on both houses, 24 and 26. 26 was listed as the um, oh, help me out, Kelly. I'm freezing up. Uh, I'm
I
gonna
don't know.
pull.
It's been so long, I can't remember. I
Yeah,
just remember I had
I'll get
everything
it.
lined
The
out.
Charles B. Wilson House, right? And then the Macris listed 24 as the C.B. Wilson House. Obviously, Charles B. Wilson, the same character. And we were really getting hung up on the fact that, would not have been that unusual in the house we just dealt with, right? The uh, 7 Lattisquama, the owner of Collins at 9 Lattisquama owned the 7 Lattisquama property and built the house there. So it was not at all unusual. It still happens. Um, but there was some suspicion that there was inaccuracy there, especially once Kelly got into the deed research, because um, C.B. Wilson doesn't appear in the deed history of number 24, despite the Macris saying that naming it, in other words, 26, the Charles B. Wilson House, 24, the C.B. Wilson House, there were discrepancies between the individual Macris reports and the East Southborough Center area report. One listed, for instance, the house at number 24 with no name at all. One called it the C.B. Wilson House. And then again, we had the Charles B. Wilson House next door. Charles B. Wilson was a carriage painter by trade, so not a developer. So there were a lot of red flags. And we went through this in a couple of open meetings and tried to get to the bottom of it. And got, I think, one memorable occasion, I really got myself twisted into my shoes um, as we tried to work this thing through. But here it is. And I'm going to go back to the share so I can bring up, because it's so, so very interesting. Um, in the deed history, this is Kelly's handiwork right here. It comes all the way back from the present owner. And I want to pick it up back here again, now this house was thought in the Macris to have been built circa 1890s. So let's jump back. And what happens in East Southborough Center, right? This was all farmland. And you had a series of transfers of land, farmland, farm buildings, a farmstead. Things are um, amalgamated and then subdivided and so on. And so it's there. And of course, we're talking about, you get back to these deeds in this era, it's, you go to the rock, 4 paces, 12 rods, it's that kind of measurement, and the numbering systems were, evolving. This area of town was all farmland until about the 1890s a lot of this was driven by the development of the Sudbury Reservoir and the removals. There were 60 buildings that were either moved or torn down, um, principally between 1895 and 1897, prior to the reservoir being complete and opened in 1898. And that drove a lot of the development and subdivision because people needed new places to live, right? And because of the proximity to the train station, this became um, pretty desirable up and coming area of town. And so what you have so let's again, I'm just going to jump back to the Jennison and the Darius and Mary Fay. That's a known farmsteads, and Patrick Fitzgerald is where I'm going to pick this up, right here. Can you see that? In 1870, he buys property and buildings, and this is part of what was very confusing to me, and I think to Kelly as well. Is well, what buildings were what, and what was one of these buildings? The house at 24 East Main in question. Well, anyway, Patrick Fitzgerald buys property and buildings noted in the deed for $2,500 in 1870. Now, Fitzgerald was a large landowner in the East Main area. In fact, the St. Anne Church was built in 1887 on land sold to the parish by Fitzgerald, who was one of the parishioners. Then you get to this transfer. Now we're pre when this house could have been built in 1870. So then you got to jump up to 1894, and you see a transfer to Jean and Honora LaRoque purchasing property and buildings for $1 in September 1894. Here's what that is. Honora LaRoque was daughter of Patrick Fitzgerald. And so if you look at the deed, book and page number, this handwritten scrolly thing, what you realize is that when Patrick Fitzgerald died, he left it was a 15-acre parcel. And he left it in 1/5 shares to his children, with apparently a 2/5 share going to Honora, who I take to be the oldest daughter, and her husband. That's why this sort of symbolic $1 transfer. But this was a 15-acre parcel at this point, left by Patrick Fitzgerald to his children. Okay. So now let's move up to Orrin Walker purchasing the house, and there's a house noted in the deed in Kelly's notes here, and that's correct, for $2,800 in July of 1897. That represented the sale of the entire 15 acres that Patrick Fitzgerald's heirs had inherited. Walker was a local developer with holdings along East Main, Marlboro, Framingham Road, and into Fayetteville. So he's buying, the heirs of Patrick Fitzgerald hold this land for, 27 years, and they don't make a whole lot. They make $300, but they sell the whole kit and caboodle. This is where it breaks right open. I'll stop boring you, but here's where it goes. This one, Mary Buckley purchased, it says, the house for $250 from Orrin Walker in August 1900. But in fact, when you look at the deed, this is where it all opens up, because what was transferred in that deed, when you go to that book and page and read it, is not 15 acres, but I'm quoting now the deed, 90 and 14/100 square rods. And when you do that math, it is very, very close to the 25,265 square feet, roughly a half an acre, that the tax rolls have the property at today. So this is exactly the right time um, for this to be subdivided because of this pressure. This area is being developed now, right? So now you look at that money. The sales price is $2,500, which makes it absolutely, and I did a lot of research on this, that it makes it crystal clear that none of the buildings mentioned in the previous transfers or none of any significance, maybe a shed, that no buildings of significance, certainly not a house, sat on the half an acre sold to Mary Buckley in 1900 because $250 would have been an absurdly low price for a home in that area. It's 1,700 plus square feet, recently built. But you know what it would have been the right price for? It would have been the market rate at that time for a half an acre lot in East Southborough Center. You follow? So there's no way. I mean, a house would have been minimum of 3 to 5, maybe 8, $9,000. But $250 would have been exactly right for the a half acre lot. And by the way, Orrin Walker, who was a very experienced local developer, as I mentioned, was basically doubling his money by splitting up this 15-acre parcel and selling out lots like this. So in my mind, and I did check that Orrin P. Walker and Mary Buckley were in no way related. So this wasn't one of these, family kind of lowball transfers. You follow what I'm saying? He's a real estate speculator. There's no earthly reason why he would have paid $2,800, and then again, this was a 15-acre transfer. This is a half an acre that Mary Buckley and her husband, Patrick Buckley, are getting. Now, here's an interesting wrinkle. This is a case where, we see these discrepancies at times between Macris and Patriot Properties. This is one where I think Patriot Properties is bang on because the Macris had it as circa 1890s for 24 East Main. Patriot Properties has it as 1900 on the button. When Mary Buckley in August of 1900 buys a half an acre lot from Orrin Walker for $250 and puts up the house in that fall. Incidentally, the husband, Patrick Buckley, this is where he lived prior to the Sudbury Reservoir coming in. So in other words, this is a house that was actually, to the best of my research, lost and torn down, would have been 1895, 97 period. And there he is, him and his wife 3 years later, buying a parcel. And it seems to me in the fall of autumn of 1900, building the house that ends up in Patriot Property. So I thought to me, it's a very persuasive timeline, and mostly having to do with, again, going from a 15-acre parcel to a half an acre parcel, that a $250 price would have been the market rate for that, a property of that size at that time, but would have been an absurd price for a recently built house. Put all those dots together, and what I propose to you is that this house be named Mary and Joseph, Mary and Patrick. I knew I was going to mess that up. Mary and Patrick Buckley House, and the date that should go on it is 1900. I don't think we need a circa. Could you follow that?
Yeah, thanks
I think
for
this would be the greatest of all possible news because it seems to be so obvious after this struggle. And I think that the problem I got into is that I simply wasn't reading the doggone scrolly, very hard to decipher handwriting. I was reading on my laptop at the time, um, not closely enough because as soon as you see it go down to, what did I say? 90 and 14/100 square rods, i.e., about a half an acre. Now and it's sold for $250. There can't be a house on it. And that's the same size of the lot today. So it seems to me, again, that Mary and Patrick Buckley, it'd be the Mary and Patrick Buckley House, Buckley, 1900. And we've got a name and we've got a date. And this is a case where, and I had a long conversation, a sidebar, with Michael Wison, former historical commission chair, about the whole Macris thing and reliability and how those some of that original research done in the 70s was just members of the commission doing the best they could and walking around and asking people questions. And then when the Forbes Schuler consultants came around circa 2000 and sort of tidied up, they were dealing with a lot of stuff and things were missed. Um, I think, and there's some errors, and this is an understandable one. But where, Kelly again did a really nice job going back and saying, oh yeah, there's Charles Wilson residing at 26, but there's absolutely no evidence of Charles Wilson at number 24, which is the subject house. And then, it just took getting to this one right there when Mary Buckley buys the parcel, a half an acre for $250 is to me the decisive. And again, it's not, Macris isn't far off. They have it as circa 1890s. What I'm saying is it's 1900, which is what Patriot has. So Grant, what do you
Yeah.
think about that?
Yeah, well, first, thanks to Kelly for, I know it's been a long project digging through this, and I think we were almost there at our last meeting, or maybe the meeting before, and then something happened, and we called off the vote or something like that, right? So I think it's pretty convincing. I guess my only question is, at least according to this document here, it looks like Mary Buckley made the purchase. Do we know? I guess the root of my question is, should we go with the Mary Buckley house, or do we know if Patrick was involved and or living there at the time, or should it just be Mary? Is my
Patrick is named in the deed as
Okay.
husband of Mary Buckley. And
Okay.
then, like I said, it was interesting when I came upon um, Patrick Buckley's former house that he lost a couple years before in the reservoir development. I thought, well, it just all the pieces really start to fit. So I
Sure.
would be in favor of including both of them,
Okay.
which
Yeah.
is
So
when we
I think
know that information, has tended to be our practice. Go ahead,
Okay.
Kelly.
Little fun fact, Orrin Walker, see where it says Orrin Walker? It's kind of like
Yep.
a third down. Right across from that house, 24 East Main is Walker Road, Walker Street.
Yes.
So
Oh.
Yep.
Mhm.
Well, yeah, he was a real mover from the stuff that I was reading. In terms of, again, he had holdings all along East Main on Framingham Road, and like I said, over into the sort of, what would that be, like the north side of Fayetteville, over by the um, History and Arts Center, let's say. Um, Annie, Michelle, anything you guys have on this one?
Oh, great job.
Yeah,
Yeah, I really,
likewise, I think this is so impressive. It like makes my brain hurt even listening to you
Hmm.
go through it. I certainly could not have done that. So thank you to you and Kelly
Hmm.
for all of your your digging on that. I think the reasoning is very sound and I'm on board.
thanks. It really was. I mean, I was so happy to have because um, again, I find the deed, I can do it, but I find it very difficult. So Kelly had sort of set it all up, and then I was just in there and looking at it and looking at it, and all of a sudden it started to. And when I started paying attention to the issue of rods and 100 square rods, All of a sudden, like the light went off, and I'm like, "Oh, you idiot! You know, you should have." But all's well that ends well. So, if no one has anything further, is there a motion to approve a historic house sign for the Mary and Patrick Buckley House, date 1900? Um, I guess that's it.
At
So,
at the address, I think you need to have
Oh,
the
I'm sorry. And the address is 24, not 26, 24 East Main Street.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Kelly. A second,
I'll second.
Oh,
Annie.
Annie's got it.
All right. Made by Kelly, motion by Kelly, second by Annie. Roll call vote. Miller's aye. Grant,
Aye.
Annie,
Yes.
Michelle,
yes.
Kelly.
Yes.
5-0. This is the one of the happiest moments of my tenure as chair of the Historical Commission. All right, but let's move quick because it gets actually easier.
Okay.
32 Ladasquama Road. Um, Absolutely lovely house. Can you see it?
Yes.
That's the street view. And this one is also connected with the Sudbury Reservoir system. Um, and what is being sought here by the owner is a replacement sign. You remember we've done one of these
Mhm.
before for the Caleb Williams house at 14 Newton Street. Um, and this is also like the Caleb Williams house. It has some pre-existing sort of um, special rhetoric on the sign that, as with the Caleb Williams house, would strongly urge the commission to honor, in other words, in a reproduction. We've done this before quite successfully, and the Caleb Williams house owner, Mr. Falcone, was utterly delighted with the result, and I think we have the same opportunity here. Um, this is an interesting one because Patriot Properties has it as 1896. The existing house has it as circa 1896. The Macris has it as circa 1900, and describes it as an astylistic gable front cottage. The rhetoric on the sign, this is an interesting one. It's a little bit like 7 Ladasquama Road, um, the Craftsman Bungalow, the first house we approved, in that this is a house that's been added on to quite a bit, but it retains with absolute integrity its original identifiable shape. And I'm going to outline it with my cursor. This is it.
Mhm.
That's the original house. And there have been two L's that have been added over time. But what's really, really fascinating on this one is that I'm going to show you the original. There it is. This is another Sudbury Reservoir removal, but instead of being demolished, this house was moved. And just look there's the two windows in the upper story, the entry at the left, these two windows, right? And if I go back to, let me try to go back to the picture of the house, which I've now lost. Where is it? It's run away on me. There it is. You can see it. It's all still there. Exactly. And this was the historic house here is the the owner is Daniel Leahy. It's inscribed on the photo. And the existing sign for this house is this one here. It's Leahy Cottage because it was picked up. And again, I told you that, the Sudbury Reservoir removals happened between 1895 and 1897. And here is Leahy Cottage, and it sits on land that was, and I won't go down this rabbit hole, but the Patrick Salmon homestead was the farm in that area of Ladasquama, it's kind of the southerly reaches of Ladasquama Road, opposite the golf course. And so it's the rhetoric here is Leahy Cottage, site of Patrick Salmon Homestead, circa 1896, and then the Southborough Historical Commission. So there's a little bit of extra language here. Um, and that's consistent with, if you remember that Caleb Williams house sign, that was also a house that had been removed um, to make way for the reservoir. It was the exact same sort of story. That house went up on Newton. This one came over to Lattisquama. And then what's really lovely about this particular house is that it's a very pretty house. With these sort of additions, I think very harmonious to the original. But the original is unmistakable because it hasn't been touched, in terms of the facade. So, um, so the research is already done. There is a Macros report on it again, as I've mentioned, um, and the further stuff about the Salmon Homestead and the Leahy Cottage was done by a previous iteration of the Historical Commission. So I would be very much for approving an exact replica of the existing sign. Go ahead, Michelle.
You're on mute.
You're muted.
Can you put up the postcard? Because I thought it said Leahy, Lahey.
Let me bring that up. Lahey.
So it's
Yeah.
correct. It's incorrect spelling on the
And what does it say on the
Leahy.
Mm.
I gotta find that.
Good
Do we know
catch there,
where maybe-
Michelle.
Good
Good
catch.
catch.
Eagle eyes.
Leahy.
Yeah.
Do we know if
Wow.
one is correct?
And let us I'm gonna hang on a second, friends.
Mhm.
I'm gonna very quickly, let me pull up this if I've got the okay, yep. I'm just trying to pull up the now this is an interesting one because in the Macros report, and the Macros report that I'm looking at is the Lattisquama Road area. This particular house is outside the National Register District. So the coverage we have was done by Forbes Schuler, the consultants that worked in 2000. And in their inventory, they have no name on the house.
Mhm.
So, this isn't, oh, wow. This is one that I think now that Michelle has brought this up, I think it would be probably wise for us to hold and consult further on this one, maybe with the homeowner and ask that question, Michelle.
Kevin, did you say that you knew who the cottage was named after?
Yeah, well, the whole thing is that here's the the core of the house, what you see on the right side of the present day photo. This is it right there. And Michelle's pointing out, right, it's the spelling here is Daniel Lahey, Lahey. And
Yeah. So, but that's in the photograph, but do we have any information about that man elsewhere? I was looking in the Lattisquama report. I don't see his name mentioned, but do we know anything about Daniel Leahy and whether or not we can find him and his correct spelling anywhere?
Probably given a few minutes, I think we probably could. Just what I mean, my trusty copy of Fences of Stone. I wonder if there's a reference here. There's a Mr. Leahy barber shop too. Let's see. Oh, that is a good catch, Michelle.
And if we don't have to do it now, then I would agree that we should probably get to the bottom of that. But other
Yeah.
than that, I think it's an easy one, and I would be in favor of keeping the extra language on it, just with whatever the correct
Yeah,
spelling.
I think this question of this is clearly the Leahy house, and why is it spelled Lahey in this photo? And yet here it is. Do I have the screen share on or off? Off. I'll bring this back. Can you guys see that?
Yep.
Are you seeing that?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So it's Leahey instead of what should it be, Michelle?
Well, in the photo, it said
Yeah,
Lahey.
Lahey,
Yeah.
Lahey versus Leahy.
Mhm.
So it's really just the transpos kind of it's the same the same letters, the same number of letters, except the E is in a different spot,
Mhm.
right? Um, wow. Michelle,
Sorry.
you're raining on my happy parade
Sorry.
here. It's it's perfectly all right, but oh my God, I thought I had a slam dunk tonight. But all right. I think I I'm very confident that the homeowner, former member of the historical commission, will be appreciative of the diligence here and patient until we get the exact right result. And it's not going to take a year because it's just one letter. But um, good catch, and let's table that one and move on. And I will reach out to the homeowner. Last one we've got 147 Southville Road. This has an individual Macris report, and it's also in the Southville coverage as the William Libby House, circa 1850. Um, Patriot Properties has this one as 1847, and the homeowner reached out to me and said that they are recent purchasers of this property. It has had some interesting work done on it. I'm going to go back to my screen share yet again and try to bring this one up for you. This is the house as, can you see that? Is it on screen for you? Yep. Okay. The shot I took this afternoon, riding by
Beautiful.
on Southville Road, and it's had a lot of work and recent renovation done to it. But you can see, and this is an interesting one because I'll bring up the Macris coverage on this one. It's going to be this one, and this is one of the reports going back to the 70s. And unfortunately, that's the best photo that I've got. But you see, the in recent renovations, it's had a porch added across the front. And I think maybe if you're a real purist about this, the one in terms of the facade, the one unfortunate loss is that there's a window that's been removed right here where my cursor is.
Mhm.
There's now a little spotlight. So you could argue that it's a little bit of a compromise to the original symmetry of the front. You see, it's the three windows, door on the left, two below. So it's kind of and then the same attic window, third story or attic window is still there. So, it's all still there. It's recognizable clearly as the Greek Revival um, kind of beauty that it
Mhm.
is, despite the loss of that one window. And the good news is that when this Macris coverage was done, for instance, this house was covered in asbestos siding. Well, happily, that's long gone, and look what you've got
Mhm.
now. That is either clapboard. I mean, it might be the um, what's the stuff the concrete siding, but
Yeah.
it's no asbestos. Um, so it's really nice. It's been beautifully done and brought back, and yeah, there's some alterations here and there, as you would expect. Any house that's lasted this long has had some changes, but I think clearly from the street, it retains its architectural integrity. I mentioned that the homeowner, again, Macris has it as circa 1850. Patriot Properties has it as 1847. And often when there's a discrepancy with Patriot, it's usually Patriot has it later. So I actually find the Patriot date of 1847 pretty persuasive. And the homeowner indicated that she has, that when they bought the house, um, it has a plaque that came with it inside the house that indicates a date of 1847. And she indicated a very strong preference for that. Of course, circa 1850 covers 1847. So on this one, um, I would I have no I guess problem with going with the date of 1847, and the name is very clearly established. William Libby House, Labby. And again, I would propose that we go with the date of 1847, given that there is some evidence within the house to suggest that, and it's within range of the circa 1850, and Patriot Properties has the 1847 date, and that's the homeowner's preference. So I don't have any problem with that. Um, any comments,
On the
Michelle?
date, oh,
No? Grant, anything?
yeah, on the date, my preference would be to go with circa 1850 because that's what we have on the Macros until the commission sees um like what supporting evidence there is for 1847 specifically. But in the meantime, I would be more inclined to go with the Macros despite the homeowner's preference, unless they can give us what they have in terms of why it should be 1847.
Yeah, a book and a page number there of Kelly. If you're able to work some miracle quick to a book 2988, page 284. Um, Annie, what's your view on this?
I'm on the Registry of Deeds right now. I don't mind looking that up real quick. Can you just scroll down to the book and page again?
Sure.
Right, what is that?
Goodness, Zoom, there's a lot of moving parts.
Yeah.
The
And
gallery
just
You
view
have a
gets in
hard
the
job there. I
way.
don't envy it.
and
Uh,
just for my reasoning on that, I just wanted to note that I'd rather have a correct range than an inaccurate specific date, I guess is kind of where I'm at. So 1850 covers it, and but if we can nail down 1847 either now or at a future meeting, then I'm obviously fine going with that. But I would be, yeah, I think it's better for us probably to go with the less specific unless we can verify it.
can you see that, Annie and Kelly, if you're both 2988 book, 284 page?
So it's not coming up for me in the Worcester Registry of Deeds.
What is that trick that Kelly, you have to go by the un I'm blanking on the
Yeah, so you have to go if you're on the Mass Land Records, you go to
Mhm.
search criteria, which is the second tab
Yeah.
up top, and then you'd go
Mhm.
to unindexed property search.
Oh, got it. Okay.
yeah, that's the key. And if you don't get
Got
that, you
it.
get
Okay.
nothing. And they don't
Okay.
they don't smooth it over for you. Well, while one or both of you look at that,
Mm-hmm.
can we hold on that, and I'll zip through a few other things now.
Mm-hmm.
I'll go
Yeah,
into
go for it.
chair's report in the interest of moving this along. Um, we of course had our commemorating Henry Knox and the noble train of artillery in the automobile age talk, which was given by Ben Haley of the Mass Historical Commission at the new Southborough History and Arts Center at Fayetteville Village Hall on March 15th. And um, Grant can vouch for the fact that I think it was really quite a nice success. And I will quickly prove it to you with a couple of photos. This is Ben at the rostrum. And to give you a sense of the crowd, there were about between, I counted it, 45 or 46 people. There's Grant uh, in the hall.
Evidence, proof.
And one other, that this is actually a better sense of the size of the crowd. It was a pretty good turnout. I mean, the room was um, pretty near full. And the talk was quite well received. And, Ben was pleased with his honorarium, which we approved. And even the cherry on the Sunday was that I sold 60 copies of Fences of Stone there, or $60 worth of Fences of Stone. That would be 6 copies.
Great
Went-
job.
yeah, which went into our donation account forthwith. And so, all in all, it was a very happy occasion and a good talk. And I was very pleased, of course, that we were able to have that talk um, the day before evacuation day, which I thought made it very significant, obviously, because that's, the day when the British decamped um, Boston under the threat of the cannons that, Henry Knox had dragged from Fort Ticonderoga. So it was pretty cool to be able to do it on that Sunday, get a good turnout, sell some books, get people excited. And I have spoken, hopefully um, when Michael Wyson um, and the town kiss and make up and everything gets settled regarding their occupancy permit. We hope to do some more things together over there because the lovely space, for those kinds of talks and lectures. And so we'll look forward to working together again shortly. More good news. The Boston and Worcester Street Railway sign. You remember the history of this, right? Again, acquired many years ago by an iteration of the Historical Commission, only for them to discover that they had no means to put it up, is now up. As of
Wow.
today, as of today,
Woohoo!
Parkerville Road South, as you approach heading north on Parkerville Road South, as you approach the abutments on the right-hand side of the road, this is courtesy of DPW and Chris Leroy. The sign has been installed. If you recall, the holdup for apparently for many years, which is why it sat on the floor in the flag school for a decade or more. When I was speaking to Chris about this originally, he said to me, "Oh yeah, I remember when they made that sign. I don't know what happened to it." I'm like, "Well, it's been sitting in the flag school, Chris, all this time." Um, the problem was that the abutments are unevenly hewn stone. That's sort of rough, and the sign was originally made to be mounted on the surface of the abutments. And the only way you could do that would be to deface the very thing that you're trying to mark. So, I went to Chris with the sign and I said, "I got a problem here. Can you help me out?" And he said, "Well, I'll take it under advisement." And finally was able to figure out a way to do it. They welded, mounted brackets on the back. These poles they had and reused, and he put these nice little sort of caps on top. Those are silver. Um, and I got the email from him this afternoon. He said it's up. So
Uh-huh. Nice.
I rushed over and took this photograph, which I happily share with you. Now it's interesting because there's always a and by the way, he did indicate to me that there's some dead trees there and there's a lot of vines and scrubby stuff, and that one of the road crews, as part of their regular, tidying up at the roadside, was going to go back in a week or two and clear this out a little bit better, so as you approach, you see the sign more clearly. They ended up mounting it a fair bit lower than our National Register signs, which are sort of head height. Remember, Andy, when we were out in the field doing this and taking these pictures with me substituting as a post? which I'm uniquely cut out for. Well, this sign is mounted more sort of waist high, like kind of starts at my waist and mid chest it ends. Um, which I think is going to be good, especially for cyclists and pedestrians. And I
Mhm.
had, as I was pulled over on the side of Parkerville this afternoon, with a stream of must have been out of towners, wink, wink, screaming by me at what is maybe the prevailing will of Southborough residents to drive, almost taking my glasses off in the slipstream kind of thing. I reflected on the fact that, that this is a sign that tells a little bit of a story and that no motorist is going to be able to make this out. And if it prompted anybody to slow down, even a couple of miles an hour or pull over and get out of the car and look at it, I would consider it a success. Because I emailed Chris back and I said, you could have mounted this over the road, and most of the motorists on Parkerville would never spot it because they're all going too doggone fast. And that's this evening's editorial, by the way, from me on driving in Southborough. But, this is
That's
a
wonderful
wonder,
news.
huh?
I was just gonna say, it's wonderful, wonderful news.
Yeah,
And
wonderful news, and it's
long time.
a great story. And maybe I'll send something off to Beth Mailer or just alert her that it's there, and because it really is a cool story that you used to be able to hop on a streetcar, at White's Corner and go to Framingham, go to Boston, go to Marlborough, go to Westboro, go to Worcester. And this was part of it, and I'm glad it's finally marked, and I consider it a great happy day that we're able to stamp that one paid too now, and finally resolved. Next, the Town Common fencing project. Also good news because in the last 2 or 3 days, the contract has been approved and signed, and work by Nealon Construction is soon to commence, as I understand it. And in fact, on Monday, June 29th, so this coming Monday, I'll be going down to DPW for a meeting. It'll be DPW staff, the Nealon construction people, the VHB consultants that help draw up the specifications for this project, and I hope a representative from the select board as well, if they can make it. So we're poised to get this going. And of course, we're co-sponsors with the select board of this initiative and got the CPC money. And it's been a long grind, let me tell you, behind the scenes to get this going. So I'm delighted with that.
And
Further,
on
yeah,
that, I know that I think there was talk about like the price was coming in higher than expected in the original bid and that kind of thing. So in
yeah,
terms of the contract that they went with, is it still within
in
the
budget.
original price
Yes.
parameter?
Yes, it is. It is within budget. There were some adults that had to be left off, and there's some details of that to be worked out, which is the subject of this meeting on Monday. Um, but I'm optimistic. Further, I've had conversation with the select board chair with regard to this project and with regard to concerns I have over some lingering challenges um, at the town common, specifically the two Common Street signs, one of which has been recovered, but which was put um, by the sidewalk contractor in the wrong place. The other of which has never been recovered. Um, Condition of the World War II, World War I howitzer that sits on the common, um, associated kinds of issues. And so I hope to walk the grounds with the select board chair within the next few days, so that we can continue because we've got the tricentennial coming up, and I really want to push hard on these, especially the central assets. And really, to me, the town common ought to be regarded as the crown jewel of the town. Um, so there is focus and attention on this, and I'm going to keep sort of trying to move this forward, and we'll report to you at our next meeting what the upshot is of my meeting with Ms. Cook and with Neil in construction with regard to the fence. Um, Rural Cemetery Water Tower Project. Uh, I wanted to give time for the Cemetery Expansion Committee to get themselves together and get their sea legs before pestering them for an audience. But I didn't wait too long, and I am scheduled to meet with them next Thursday. It's going to be Thursday, July 2nd, at 1 p.m. And this is to kind of, we got to make a decision, folks, kind of time, whether the cemetery people who are, of course, charged with finding room in the cemetery one way or another, whether they're interested in this idea of the tower as possibly becoming a columbarium and a kind of rallying central point or piece of cemetery expansion, which I think is going to have to unfold in multiple ways, and kind of multiple solutions. Land is not infinite, and unless we want the golf course to someday become cemetery, we're going to have to start to think creatively and with the majority of um, uh, deceased uh, persons being cremated in the U.S. rather than embalmed and buried. It's time to start thinking very seriously about that. Well, we'll see. So I asked for an audience with them. I've been granted one. I'll see if they're interested. If they are, we can talk about moving forward, perhaps with the feasibility study in that, and I'll be happy to hand it off over to them and with us advising or consulting. And if they're not, um, I think we should go back to Plan A, which was to proceed with the CPC project to, restore and preserve this unbelievably unique asset of Southborough as this, beautiful, it tells so many stories about the town, about municipal water supply, about the rural cemetery movement in the United States. I mean, it has a lot of stories to be told there, and it's quite beautiful in its own right. So I was assured by the town accountant that the money that had been allocated by the select board all the way back in December for the historical study of the tower was still valid and still on the table. It didn't expire, for instance, at the end of the fiscal year like our regular budget does. Um, so that's good news. We still have the money. And again, if the cemetery committee is interested in what I'm selling, um, we'll have that conversation. If they're not, we're going to pivot right back to the CPC angle and move forward with all speed. So good news there.
On that, Kevin, if you don't
Yeah,
mind, one
sure.
quick thing. I think that it makes sense to, see what comes out of that meeting next week. In terms of the study, I'll just note that CPC timelines, I know that we'd be thinking about the fall application process for the next town meeting probably, but
Yeah,
in terms of that, like I know that we ran into procedural issues and not in terms of not having that study done and not knowing the cost and all that stuff.
right.
So if it comes to just in terms of timing, if it comes to that, we would we would be doing an application or revised application in September,
Right.
and we really have to get things figured out by November, December, I think, or probably earlier than
Yeah,
that.
and I've tried to keep the chair and can you I don't want to kind of preempt your CPC update, but I, I I think I heard it. I mean, Lisa Braccio is still chair at this point of CPC, right?
Yes.
Okay, because I thought because that she had become a chair of planning that she was considering. I think it said at some point. Um, you
I
know,
have not heard that, but maybe you're better informed than me. But
I,
as far as
I
I know, anyway, yeah.
yeah. Oh, it's all fine. But I did email the CPC chair recently, just letting her know where we were at and trying to keep everybody looped
Okay.
and fully informed. And because I'm very conscious of this. Although look, it's just like these house signs. I'd rather do it right
Yeah,
than fast, ultimately. And this is a really important one with, hundreds of thousands of dollars, or maybe
sure.
more, um, involved. So,
Thanks.
um, and Kelly, just interrupt me if you get anywhere and find anything about the,
Well, I did. The last thing I saw was on the Macros thing, door is spelt wrong. It's DORR, not DOER. If you look at the page, somebody scribbled it in.
which, with regard to Southville,
Yes.
and how does that affect,
Well, there's a note in the deeds, and I'll snip it and send it to you. Is first parcel described
oh yeah, I
of
see what you're talking about. Yeah, yeah, the
yeah.
1898 thing. Yep, yep,
So
yep.
it looks like Mary Dorr was was the last person that I can find so far for 1887, DORR. But I'm doing it again.
Yeah, because this one should go back to 1847.
Okay. No,
So
Another,
still doing it.
yeah, likewise, I think Kelly and I are at the same place.
mm,
I was able to track this back to 1886. It's like once they get the handwritten deeds, that's when you know it's really old.
Yeah.
yeah.
And I don't see a reference to like anything prior to this to look up.
Mm.
So, I mean, maybe when I have more time to really focus on this, maybe I can try more, but the farthest I can track back as of right now is 1886. Um, and I agree, it's Mary E. Dorr, Dorr.
Yeah, I mean, per the Macros, we should be able to go back quite a bit, obviously, before that. So I don't know. This is one that, because the Macros seems so rock solid,
Mhm.
I was not particularly regarding. And there may be something in the, um, I know I've looked at the Southfield area report in this, but I don't recall what it had. Yeah, they have it going back to, again, 1850. William Libby.
Robinson Henry. I'm just thinking maybe we have to look up by name now.
Yeah, that's a trick.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a little sorry, I'm a little stumped on that one. Um, well, I'll let you guys, Kelly, keep looking, and we'll keep going. Um, the last thing that I had was, and this is just really a matter of segue into the members' report, is that the June 16th select board meeting, which was last week, and I attended, um, really pursuant to the wayfinding project, which, more anon. Um, but I did also stay to listen to an update to the select board by the Tricentennial Committee, and it was Don Morris, the chair, and Patty Burns Fury, the vice chair, who spent about a half an hour, um, explaining all the kind of wonderful things that they're doing. And with that, I really want to turn it over to Michelle. Just to say that, I was happy I get it from Michelle, of course, but I was happy to get it also from the chair, and a kind of more extensive overview of all the things that they're up to and that we feel very supportive of. So go ahead, Michelle.
Yeah, so there's a lot going on. I mean, the one thing that I want to iterate to people, I don't know if Dawn mentioned it, but we really need some volunteers. We're down two committee members, and this project has really grown. I mean, there's a lot of major events going on, and so we could really use a couple more committee members. in the committees, we also have subgroups and those, the working groups. Things are going along really well, but things are really starting to heat up. So, if anyone out there is listening and has some extra time, it's a fun committee, and we could really use a couple of extra hands, even if you can't make the commitment, just to maybe just volunteer on one of the working groups. But yeah, so there's a full calendar, and the calendar starts actually probably January 1st. I mean, there's drone shows scheduled, it's called First Day, but there's something every month. I mean, the house tour, the parade, um, the graveyard. We've also teamed up with existing groups like Summer Nights. It's going to be a big concert as well. And so we're really supersizing things, and it's going to be exciting. We are still looking to do a lot of fundraising because we just need money for all of these events too. But things are really moving, and like I said, we're getting down to the wire because it sounded like when this first was a, was in, was a concept, it says, oh, we have so many years, but really, it's less than a year, and we have to really just get moving. But it is fun. So I don't know if anyone has any specific questions about any of the events, but there's the fireman's muster that's going to happen in July, and the parade. There's a lot of big events. Any specific questions from anyone?
I don't, and I can sympathize with the recruitment issue because we're going to be down two after tonight, and that with a quorum would we can have seven, we're going to have five, quorum of four. It's a real challenge. So we'll talk more about that later, but I can certainly sympathize. One of the things that you know. I hope if I mean, I'm so wrapped up in some of the things we're trying to do with the fence and the
Hmm.
water tower and these signage and if things clear up for me a little bit, I would like to get involved in some of the oral history project um, that we've been theoretically been doing together, but and I know that some of those you've done quite a few at this point, or a fair amount, right?
Yes, we have a lot of people. So we finally got a few recruitments from, believe it or not, Facebook.
Mm.
I grew up in Southborough, so I put it out there and I got quite a few responses. Um, when trying to schedule it, it's a little bit more difficult, but we're getting there, and just here and there, and we are still looking for volunteers. I don't know, Kelly, if you have any interest, or if I've reached out to a few people, Austin and is it Jim Collieri?
Yes, Jim
And
Cleary, he's the town electrician. Austin is, and I still talk to them a lot. I don't know, a good person to talk to would be Bobby Bazakis. He used to own that house on the corner of Central and Route 9, the one that got taken down. It was like
Mhm.
some kind of bar or something
Got
back.
moved to the tavern. Yep.
Yeah, so
Could you send me his contact
sure.
information?
Actually, I was planning to go see him. He lives up on Oak Hill, so I'll pop in and I'll talk to him.
I have to say that people are a bit reluctant, but it's not really an interview, it's a conversation, and it's very casual and very edited. So we're actually getting to the part where we're going to start some editing. So just try to get those guys. They have never answered my email, and I think,
Oh,
even
all right.
just try to really encourage them because it's fun. It's really a fun conversation, and it's fun
Austin would be
listening
a
to these people.
Austin would be a great one. He was a big part of the happenings in 1976, like the
Mhm.
Bush, something like that or other. They had the jail and everything. One question I did have is to interview, are you willing to travel to local towns or would a committee member
Well,
like
so
nursing homes? That's where Westboro. A lot of people go to Westboro. My father's at St. Patrick's Manor in Framingham, where I know there's other Southboroians.
Well, that's interesting. I'll have to run that by Terry, who runs Southborough Access Media. We've thought about doing some Zoom because there's some people that are willing to do Zoom, but I assume that people in those homes probably don't have access to Zoom. Maybe that's an unfair assumption, but I think that could be done if you have some candidates. We really want to listen to stories. So,
Sure. I know my father would probably do it. And he's in Framingham and he can Zoom because I can bring in my
oh,
laptop.
oh, that's perfect because Terry said that we can definitely Zoom. I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't volunteer her, but she's very amenable to anything. So, you know, I won't rule it out.
Okay.
I'll ask her.
And I'll talk to Jim and Austin and see if what their availability is.
That would be great. There's another person that somebody suggested, and I don't know how to get in touch with them. He was a tree warden, and he lives on Corderville Road. They said that he's also another candidate. He was a town
I
employee.
don't know who that would be.
We,
Um,
you know, we can take it offline
yeah,
too.
yeah, yeah, let's do that.
I'll
Sorry,
do some
guys.
research.
Oh,
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Well, good. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.
Uh, Grant, CPC.
yeah, so it's been a busy time. It seems like it's always a busy time with CPC.
Hmm.
Typically, we have a kind of a lull in the summer months, but in this case, and this year, that's not happening. So we had our uh, annual public forum a couple weeks ago, which was good. If anyone wants, you can look up the recording about how CPA works. People bring forward ideas for potential projects. There was someone who forward an idea or is inquiring about a potential historic project, so that was interesting. And so we're going to be meeting again soon to be kind of revising the application and application handbook and getting that up online. Um, this year is a bit different. Typically, we just do an annual application process, which is currently September 15th deadline for following year's town meeting. So it'd be, for 2027 meeting. Um, this year, because there were kind of a lot from these last year's process that were kind of lingering and didn't quite get to the finish line, we're kind of doing a two-track system in which if there were existing applications or applications that have already received CPA funds but have kind of run into trouble, like costs coming back higher, that kind of thing. We're kind of allowing limited exceptions to kind of allow them to potentially apply for a special town meeting, CPA funds at the special town meeting in the fall. And then in the meantime, we'll be opening up our regular application process, which applications will close for that in September. So kind of got two application cycles going on this year, which is keeping us on our toes.
Nice. Well, and hopefully like I said, the fencing project is going to roll forward and um, be good for CPC and the water tower thing as well. I've got my fingers crossed on both. I'm going to skip forward. Thank you, Michelle and Grant. I'm going to skip forward just very quickly to mention on item 6 on our agenda, the old burial ground priorities discussion. This is, I, I don't want to go into it in the interest of time tonight and to try to save people's patience, but I will say this is concerning the issue about marking those um, or commemorating the unmarked Revolutionary War veterans' graves over there. It's just driving me crazy. And I don't want to open this can of worms tonight because it's going to be an extended discussion, but I will just say that I need help. This is a really tough one because there are existing markers that are in competition. You've got unmarked graves. You don't know where everything is. The ground penetrating radar information is a little sketchy, a little outdated. There's a lot of components to this to get this right. I think Sally Waters, who continued to work on this after she was even sort of off our payroll, so to speak, um, has done a really good job of getting as good a list as I think we're going to get. So I think informationally we're very strong. It's just how we're going to execute this in a way that's tasteful, that's discreet, but that's not obscure, that doesn't add to the sign clutter that there's always run the risk of down in that area. And so it's a very complicated and delicate thing, but we gotta get this. This is my top priority now that some of these other things are getting sort of cleared off the table. But we will come back to it another time. I do want to get to give you the opportunity um, to express some thoughts on this um, wayfinding thing. And I want to bring you up to speed on really what that has involved because um, we haven't had the opportunity to discuss this. You may recall that there was a one-stop grant application put in for a branding and wayfinding, and it sort of evolved down into a wayfinding um, grant. And this project has been spearheaded by the Assistant Town Administrator Vanessa Hale, quite ably, by the way. And it was actually last June of 25, that on fairly short notice we had met. I wrote a letter in support as chair of Historical Commission for this initiative and was very happy to do so. The town was awarded the grant um, for this study for its signage and marking purposes and directing people throughout the downtown. Um, and there were a couple of kind of ad hoc, I wouldn't call it a committee, but meetings of um, concerned parties or interested parties that was convened by Vanessa Hale. One that was, I believe, in March that I attended, and it had a kind of broad range of people. It was a very nice, interesting group, a dozen or more folks, everyone from, I was there, um, Mr. Parent, who's, handles facilities for the town, Chief Newell, pretty broad range of parties that attended this meeting. And we heard a presentation from the consultant that's been hired to do the study, which was Stantec. And we're given a chance to offer some preliminary thoughts. They toured the town. They went off and did a lot of their work. Then there was a second meeting in May that unfortunately I couldn't attend because I was quite ill actually that week. Um, but then subsequently, Ms. Hale reached out to me and was very kind and invited me to come down to her office and talk to her about, what my thoughts on some of the preliminary work that was done were. And I did. Spent about an hour with her. And then, of course, this was sent out into the community um, for feedback. And the feedback wasn't all that extensive, as I recall, in terms of the number of respondents, but it was very interesting feedback, and I think, helpful in the process. Anyway, here's the report. I sent it out to you, and it came to me just a couple of days actually before um, Ms. Hale and a representative of Stantec were or did present to the select board last week the report and the findings and the result of the survey, that they did of townspeople and how they felt about some of the preliminary designs. And there's a movement to go for a second grant to actually execute all this stuff and pay for all this signage. So I want to be very clear about this. This is not Historical Commission's project. Um, I'm not trying to look into muscle in on it, that's for sure, because my dance card is quite full. Um, but it does concern us because a lot of it is driving, people toward schools, commercial activity in town, business district, but also toward historic assets in town. It's not a history walk. I think it has the potential to perhaps direct people toward a history walk that I continue to be, and I can tell you that this Southborough Historical Society is deep in work, as I understand it, on historical walk, and I've had conversations with Mr. Wyson extensively about how the private um, historical society might partner with the town, historical commission um, to further that effort and to sort of embed it in official town signage, for example. Um, Again, without the issue, the concern, and this was voiced in the select board meeting. The issue is concern is about sign pollution and over signage. So it's a very delicate dance. But what I wanted to say was, I went down to the select board meeting. Vanessa had asked me if I would come and support, and I was happy to do so. And one of the things, so I did speak um, to the select board on this point, and I had a sort of a twofold message. One, well, first and foremost, was to say how admiring I am of Ms. Hale's work on this and the outreach and the sense of trying to build, a constituency for the work and her openness to hearing feedback and all that. And then I did have some feedback, and it was directed at the consultant um, who I had noted that in the report had sort of missed um, a number of things as a destination list of where people would be directed, and it had omitted the community house, the rural cemetery, the Burnett Burial Park, and the town common. Um, and there was some confusion. For instance, it's interesting that we have a golf course committee, um, but on maps the Southborough Golf Course is listed as the golf club, and the website is Southborough Golf Club. And I asked the question, is it a golf course or is it a golf club? I don't know. I don't golf. Um,
DPC just had the same question at our meeting because we're doing a
oh,
sign for them. It is the
yeah,
golf club is the correct
is it? It
terminology.
is. Well, that's great. I mean, I'm thrilled. And I had recommended that the area of consideration should not stop at Parkerville and Maine and Parkerville, that it should really go to Deerfoot in Maine, which is then including the Burnett Mansion, in which the town has $1 million invested in a preservation restriction, and so on. So there's some suggestions, and it was all offered in the spirit of, I think this is great work. I think it's very promising work. And I look forward to seeing it progress further, which is always frustrating. I haven't had a chance to talk to Vanessa since, but one of the things I look forward to telling her is that, just dealing with the National Register signs, there's 7 National Register signs that are all exactly the same. And how hard that was and how long it took and what a battle, and satisfying, different constituencies and where's it going to be and how high it's going to be and what's it going to block and this and that. And, you know, that was cake compared to what, Vanessa is you know, and with of course Mr. Purple and lots of other people, but Vanessa's been spearheading this. What she's trying to pull off is really, really complicated and really, really difficult. And so I have the deepest respect and sympathy for the whole enterprise. Um, but I wanted to bring it to you, and I wanted to send it to you so that you would have the opportunity. So for instance, one of the things that came out of this, that Stantec's original um, kind of they want to have a kind of overriding logo, so to speak, for the town. And there's a town seal, which it's always commented upon that it's in a way none too prepossessing. Um, but I want to show you the original. Oh, here it is. It seemed like what was being favored um, in one of the designs was this one, um, featuring this is the dam, the Sudbury Reservoir Dam over by the Framingham line and Pine Hill Road area, where like it's an MWRA property. You can't even drive up it. You can't get there. And one of the bits of feedback I had on this particular design was that it seemed more appropriate to the MWRA than maybe the town of Southborough, because I ventured that 9 out of 10 Southborough residents, if they saw that picture, they wouldn't know where the hell that thing was, or wouldn't know how to get to it, or wouldn't be able to identify it. You know what I mean? Like it didn't really, for me, speak to Southborough. And I just offhandedly um, mentioned that, it seemed to me that if you were looking for a structure, that the rural cemetery water tower, which was visible, from Corderville Road and from the public safety building and from Woodward School and from Corderville Hall, would be far more recognizable structure. And lo and behold, there ended up, this is a later version of it. And I thought, well, now that's nice. I mean, I have a certain bias toward this, although this didn't test well, um, which was pointed out in the select board meeting, particularly with residents. So maybe there's the third way or a fourth way or a fifth way. Um, there was some discussion about, you'll be interested to know this, that even in terms of the shape of the signs, um, one of the leading contenders was modeled after our National Register signs with this sort of squared off and then the curve up here, because the feeling was this is sort of these two on the right are the most expensive to produce. This is obviously the most utilitarian and sort of boring. And I think Vanessa and others and I quite agree with her that this shape, which is again modeled after our National Register signs, has some visual interest, but it's not going to break the bank either. It's actually more affordable. So I think there's some preference at this point for this shape. So there's all kinds of, and again, this is not our party. We're sort of, invited guests, I think very wisely and kindly on behalf of the real movers here. Um, I'm was given the opportunity to offer some input, took it, but I have not had the opportunity to bring all this stuff to you and see if there's anything that you want me to convey, in any future meetings, if there are any, um, with this ad hoc group that's met informally or and with Ms. Hale. So I don't know, did you have time to go over this or have any thoughts? And it's a little bit tricky because it's um, again, it's trying to, and the report, if you had time to read it, as you know, a lot of it is boilerplate kind of stuff about best practices, signage, how high, how low, the approach, and what they, some of which, frankly, I I was too thrilled in some of the comments they actually made about the National Register signs, complaining that they weren't legible to pedestrians, which I thought was absurd.
Absurd. Yeah.
Because like, have you been on the sidewalk in Southborough? You walk up by Fay. It's right there. It's beautiful. You walk in front of the Knights of Columbus. It's right there. It's beautiful. Everybody walks up Lattisquam all the time, and they I get constant comments. They see it, they know it, they like it. Um, and then they were saying, but you can't. Then they were conversely saying that you couldn't really read it from a car either. And I was like, well, if you do the speed limit on Main Street, which is 20, right, Michelle? Um, you'd know. Um, the Michelle who lives on Main Street,
Yeah.
you would know that they actually are, and they're of course the purpose of those signs, and we had looked at dozens of them across the state and elsewhere, that they're symbolic of the entry point to the district. They're not meant to teach you the history of Southborough. There was some kind of dueling complaint on the part of the consultant that it had too much information and too little, and I'm like, well, you know, putting my that aside, and there were some inventory things like they missed one or two, I think, of our signs even in their inventory. So, there's an opportunity for us to, again, in a constructive
Hmm.
way, offer some help. But again, this is designed to guide people around the central corridor of the town and show people where things are at. Um, but it was never meant to be per se a historical walk. So I think, again, I just wanted to, Grant,
Yep.
Michelle, Annie, Kelly, if you have anything
Yep.
you want me to bring back to them, I'm happy to do it.
Kevin, is it possible to attend one of these meetings? Because I actually, um, I was not available for the last meeting, and I feel that downtown is just littered with signs, and I
Yeah,
can't imagine putting additional signs up. I mean, if you walk down Main Street, you go, I don't know, 10 feet, and I feel that there's another sign. And
right.
this was all after the Main Street project. So I don't want to be negative, but I can't imagine where they're going to put additional signs.
Yeah, and that was a big concern. Like I said,
Hmm.
I believe um, I know Mr. Dennington brought
Yeah,
this concern up,
that
and
came up at the select board, yeah. And
yeah, there and
somebody
there
had the question of like how many of them will be replacing essentially like bad signs right now in
right.
terms of like fixing language versus
Hmm.
installing new. And I think Vanessa Hale had said that it would be like the vast majority would be new installations. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a big concern. And there
Hmm.
was like even entry. Did they want one sort of big sign or a number of smaller signs? And I was making the case at one point in a smaller setting, um, that to me the most meaningful signs in the downtown area in Southborough are um, the most natural ones, the granite mile marker at the foot
Hmm.
of Common Street. The old, this is why I'm so desperate to find that other one or to have it replaced. The old cast iron Common Street signs. They're the things that give a distinctive feeling to the town as opposed to a kind of, we've arrived at a ski resort kind of thing and you're seeing, I'm not a big fan, to be perfectly frank, of like this kind of signage,
Hmm.
which I just find dull and generic, you know?
Character.
Yeah, and it's sort of out of character with the
Yep.
New England feel of of Southborough as a community. So I think you did hear that on the select board, a certain kind of caution about, I don't, do we want to end up like with this kind of stuff? I don't really cotton to it that much. But I think there's a way to get there. So go ahead, Annie. I'm sorry.
Oh, I think Kelly had her hand up before me.
Oh, sorry.
Hi, thanks, Annie. I'm gonna have to agree with Michelle. I feel like it's getting a little too cluttered. It's taken away from the charm. Southborough's supposed to be like a little charming, quaint, and I don't know. I just felt like putting in my 2 cents.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think that was a concern, and I feel it, and I tried to, express it. You don't want to be an impediment to progress, and I do think there's a need um, for, a coordinated kind of effort to, that, but there is, I walk the same main street that, many of you do all the time, and it's just there's a lot, so go
Yeah.
ahead. Yeah.
So I'll just jump in, like from the historical commission perspective, I don't really have many comments. My only thing, so I did glance at the presentation here. It's obviously very lengthy. You can tell there's a lot of work and effort that has gone in behind this whole effort. Um, I just can't help but thinking how much all of this is going to cost. And I know it sounds like there may be grants available or something, but it doesn't sit well with me that I feel like this is going to be a massive expense without knowing exactly how it's going to be funded. So that's just what's in the back of my mind. Like if we ultimately go to town meeting, is this even going to be approved as an expense? It seems like a lot of work that I don't know if the town has the appetite for it. But that's just a very, high level thought from me when there's a lot of things facing our town that we need money for.
Yeah, I think I mean I can't vouch for this 100%, but I think the intention was that this would be, grant funded, that they're looking to get
Okay, that's good.
money to like a one-stop part two to
Hmm.
be able to do this. But I just what I hope, and I don't know, I haven't heard anything since, this thing last week. I mean, I'm hoping that it's tough because, like I said, I'm so sympathetic to how difficult this is to do. Like, it's really hard. And, so you don't want to come across as like, well, I'm complaining
Hmm.
about this or that or raining on the parade, so to speak. But I, I think, again, it's one of those things you want to get right, and it's a process. And if, there are further conversations, I'll just say one last thing about this myself is that the the focus of the because of this sign clutter concern, um, I was this has complicated my thinking about the Revolutionary War thing and the OBG. But the only other place that I have a real thought, and I feel there is a need for some modest, very tasteful signage that gives an air of permanence, is, we have a National Register sign basically at the head of Heritage Park, right? As you come down Marlborough Road and you arrive at the entrance of the park, and the sign is right there. And I think it really gives a sense of, you've arrived. Um, but I think, and especially given, the history, the hundreds of artifacts that, Dan Blanchard picked up in that area every time it rained. It wasn't hard to get them, kind of thing. Um, that there is a story to be told there. And I said to, Michael Wison that I thought the Heritage Park would be a really good place because there's parking for people who wanted to take a walking tour of Southborough Center, go into East Main area around, you'd go all the way down to Sears Road. Um, that would be a good place to start. And if, for instance, you were to have something that was phone guided, um, could you put something at Heritage Park, maybe in one of those, I know the Tricentennial is selling bricks for the circular plazas, um, but could you place something that was modest, tasteful, um, that would trigger the walk, start the walk here, you know? Um, I don't want to, we don't want to be painting red lines on the sidewalks like the Freedom Trail in Boston. But in other words, you would start there, you might scan something there, and then from there be guided by your phone through the walk. And I don't know if that's going to get any traction or not, but um,
My understanding of the wayfinding was that it's not so much a history walk kind of thing, but it's just like if you've never been to Southborough before, do you turn left or right to get to the townhouse? Do you turn
correct.
up this
A-
street? Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely correct. And like I said, that's why this is not our playpen. However, since some of the things, a good many of the things that people would be directed to are in fact historic assets, and this is why I think, I very much appreciated the outreach of the people down at the townhouse, Vanessa, by name, to, ask my opinion about things, and, without, pushing it too hard. I'm trying to advocate, um, for a kind of historical sensitivity or just bringing, a thought about, I, it seemed to be that, you know, I, the argument I was making against the dam had some traction just because it just seemed to me that nobody knew about it, you know, um, and nobody could identify it on a map if they had to, kind of thing. Because it's not something that people in town pass by on a regular basis, you know. Um, so anyway, and the consultants who are very smart, very good, very experienced people at what they do, um, they may come back having heard the things that they've heard, with some insight that we don't have. So go ahead, Michelle.
So one thing that Annie said one of her concerns was the money, and then you turned around and said they're thinking about grants. Just because there is money but is there you really have to think about it. Is this really something that the town needs? I mean, I'm not trying to be negative, but I mean 2 weeks after the Main Street project was done and all those signs went up, and it was just, it's overwhelming. And just because there is money out there, is this really something that we need to do?
Yeah. Well,
And this
again,
is
have
first,
I have a
yeah.
feeling from the sentiment I heard on the select board that they're very much aware of that. That's sort of thought to be a central issue, um, to do it with restraint. I agree with the underlying impulse that there's opportunities to improve wayfinding and the guidance of people around town. And some of the inconsistencies in signage that the consultants point out are points well taken. But yeah, I think we're all in agreement, and I think the select board agrees, and that the risk is that you're just going to plaster the joint with.
Mhm.
I think if we are going to, like, at one level, it's not really our decision about whether or not these signs are going to go up. So if they are going to go up, we should make them, like, I get your impulse, Kevin, to be involved in the process. I think probably where we can lend the most, I guess, expertise is historical assets. They're just assets in the downtown that, and I think you started this at the select board meeting, but like what's missing from the sign, what should be on there that isn't.
Yeah. Yeah.
The logo, the actual design of the sign, I'm a little less like, obviously it's, I looked at the designs and it's kind of interesting, whatever. Um, I'm a little less concerned with that, but obviously, if we are advocating for some sort of historic asset on the sign, then I guess we should be involved in, somewhat involved in that. In terms of which one, the Rural Cemetery Tower is great. I don't know if it's any better than the Flag School or the Townhouse or any of those others. But that's just getting into aesthetics at that point.
I'll tell you what,
Yeah.
Grant, it's so funny. I took one of the color schemes that were being floated, and I took a picture of the townhouse and I plugged it into one of the AI generators that'll do visuals. And I said, make me a logo. And I spent about 20 minutes tinkering it. and it was pretty good. And I thought, um, yeah, I mean, but point taken. I think maybe, if I had any value, added any value at all, and I'm not convinced, but if I've added any value to the conversation, it was partly just to say, hey, you can't miss the community house if you direct. I mean, community house is a pretty good sign to begin with, but if you're directing, from a distance here or there, how you can't leave out, which is to me is one of the key assets, the um,
Yeah.
85-30 intersection. Like how do you miss that? So, it's just, I'm not saying in some snarky way, but just, hey guys, consultants, um, there's certain things you can't miss. So, all right, well, I will listen, I'll keep you guys posted. I don't know where this is going. Um, like I said, I'm supportive but I feel the same cautions that all of you feel and that I think the select board shares. So, I think we'll all get there with this um, but again, I hadn't had the opportunity to bring this to you because it sort of unfolded very quickly. And now it's here, and if you have further thoughts, you can pass them to me individually and I can pass them. And Michelle, if there is another meeting, I'm happy to ask Vanessa if, members of historical can
Thank you.
attend, and if I have to post an agenda because we have quorum, I'll do it.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. And sorry that it took rather a long time. Let's get these minutes approved because we got to get straight with our friends at the clerk's office. The meeting minutes of January 5th, 2026. I've reviewed myself and I sent my edits back to Grant. That's what's been posted in draft form. So the question is, do any of you have any further edits for the January 5th, 2026
I wasn't
meeting?
there, so I can't attest.
Okay. Anything, Michelle or Annie, that
No?
you caught? In that case, I'll make the motion to approve the meeting minutes of January 5th, 2026.
I
Is there a
second
second?
it.
Okay, seconded by Michelle. Roll call vote. Miller's aye. Grant?
Aye.
Annie?
Yes.
Michelle? That was a yes, although your microphone's off. I'm a good lip reader. With long practice. Kelly,
No comment
so you're
because I wasn't here for that meeting.
abstain then, right?
Yeah, abstaining. Yes.
Okay, so 401, Grant. Those minutes are approved. Then we have March 5th, 2026. And again, same process. I reviewed them, suggested edits. Grant posted those as draft minutes, so we got clear with Mr. Haggerty. And if there are any further comments on those, Annie, Michelle, or Kelly, anything? No changes? All right,
No
then
changes.
again, I will make the motion that we approve the meeting minutes of March 5th, 2026, as as edited or as appear in draft form, currently posted on the website. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so motion by the chair, seconded by the vice chair. Roll call vote. Miller's aye. Grant?
Aye.
Annie?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
Kelly?
Yes.
So 5-0 on that one. Those minutes are done. Thank goodness. Any other business? I don't have any. Is there any public comment? No. All right. So doubling back for 1 second. Kelly, did you make any breakthrough on that?
So I got back
147
to
southbound?
Henry Robinson ended up selling the house to Mary Dorr in November 8th, 1886. So that's where the Annie's 1886. But then I just sent you a snip of a map that is from like I think the 50s, the 1850s. I wrote it on the email. And if you look at that and you can figure out the house, that will tell you the name of the house back from the 1850s. Let me go back to my email.
And it's right there,
Yeah,
because it's near the intersection of um, Southville and Parkerville, and there it is, William Libby.
it's the fourth house in, but I don't know if any of those other houses, like for a current map, it's the fourth house, but was a house built between that map and now in there? You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
that's where the research would have to.
yeah, that does well. That's pretty good for me. And that map is what,
Let me see, what was that? Hold on a second.
1858.
Yes.
Yeah, we're still.
So I still go back to supporting what Grant said is I would say it's preferable to have a pretty solid range than not be 100% sure on a specific date.
Yeah. So let me say this. Again, having spoken with a homeowner, she was really quite um, committed in a way to that 1847. Based on everything, that's there, if you guys are really, dug in on the 1850, we can approve William Libby House circa 1850 and put it to the homeowner that, and I had said that in general, unless we had something um, that, clearly established it, we tended to defer to the Macris.
So on that, Kevin, do you know so I know that they're insistent on 1847, but do you know why that is, or have you seen any, like,
Well,
I'm not
because,
doubting it. It's just
well,
for me
two
personally,
reasons.
I
Yeah,
haven't seen it.
it's two reasons. One is that that's what Patriot Properties has.
Okay.
And secondly, they have an existing plaque in the house, not issued by the Historical Commission, but arising from, who knows? I mean, there are people around town that have those kinds of
Yeah.
things that they've done their own. And that says 1847. Now, they're recent purchases of the house. And so they,
Yeah.
and I think because it's on the tax rolls as 1847, and the macro says circa 1850, which covers a 5-year range in either direction. It's not unreasonable at all. It's just how doctrinaire, we're prepared to be about it. In the absence of, all I can think of is, it took us a pretty long time on 24 East Main. We got it right, I'm positive. But, I would be prepared to, if this is the sentiment here, to approve William Libby House circa 1850 and say, this is what we've got. If you want 1847, you're going to have to come to us with the deed research,
Mhm.
and because what if you start to realize, by the way, friends, and I don't want to belabor this because we're after 9 and I was hoping to be done by 8:30, is that you start to understand why Nantucket charges $1,200 for one of these signs, because they do all this research and they go to and we're doing it kind of, for free. And let me tell you, that 24 East Main cost me and Kelly a lot, like a lot of angst, blood, sweat, and tears. So, I mean, I think it would be fair to approve, again, William Libby House circa 1850 and say, if you want something else, go get it,
Mhm.
and come back to us with
Yeah.
proof.
And something other than the tax rolls. Like I think
Yeah.
it needs to be the deed research. I just keep going back to like my sign. It says 1852 in Patriot Properties. Macris says 1850, and they were, this was, 8 years ago now, but very insistent. We don't go by what's in Patriot Properties.
Right. So you're circa 1850?
50. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Okay,
I
you guys,
think we saw tonight with Patriot, like, I don't know enough about Patriot Properties. I use Macros. I don't really use that, but the other one. But we've seen kind of wild swings. This is
Right.
not a wild swing, it's a 3-year gap, but like in general, I think we, as the commission, we trust Macris more.
Yeah, and this is why, though, it's so funny. Like I said, I had this long conversation with Michael about this, and it it was interesting, because he's got a little bit longer perspective on the way these things have evolved. Um, and I just thought, well, this is all human work, and I know well how easy it is to get turned around and transpose a letter or word. Look at what we had with the Leahy thing. So, is there sentiment here to approve William Libby House circa 1850 and just go back to get it done and see if we can get it done?
Mhm.
And
I,
if we have,
I'm in favor of that.
okay. I'm going to make the motion then. I would move that we approve 147 Southville Road for a historic house sign to read William Libby House circa 1850.
Second.
Second.
Okay, I think Michelle got in there by a nose. Um, okay, so motion made and seconded. Roll call vote. Miller's aye. Grant,
Aye.
Annie,
Yes.
Michelle,
Yes.
Ellie.
No.
Okay, so 4-1. You're outvoted.
I know. Well, the reason why is because that map, that
Yeah.
snip is from an 1858 map,
Yeah.
and you're saying circa 1850 is 5 years
Right.
before or after, and the
Right.
map clearly says, and I don't know if you can
Oh,
pull
but
it up and show everyone,
of
it
course.
says 1858.
Right. Well, that's when the map was produced, but not, the house could have been there.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So but point taken. So we passed it, 4-1. I will go to the homeowner with that and say, look, we can do it right away if you're cool with that. And if not, come back to us at another meeting and I'll hold the sign. And that's it. Because, we always send the art to the homeowner for approval before we go into production anyway. So
Mhm.
done. One last thing. I got to double back on
Can I
this
just
because,
ask a quick question? I
yeah,
I thought circa meant the decade.
no,
It
it's,
means it means 5 years on either side?
yes.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
What is
That's in
is there an R
range. Range.
range?
Yeah. When it's R, you'll see that occasionally in Macros.
Yeah.
That's a much fuzzier one. Like
Got it.
it could be a
Okay.
decade or more. Like
Okay.
yeah. And in the, somewhere in the footnotes of the Macros, they explained the convention there that
Mhm.
C is the 5 years. The R,
Got it.
we're a
Okay.
lot less certain,
Okay.
so.
I don't know why I had that so wrong. I thought it was any time in like the 10 years after. So now I know. Thank you.
It's a
Well,
little,
it is a
yes.
10-year, it is a 10-year range, just +5 -5.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Back on and I'll tell you the reason I asked this. Annie will appreciate this as our treasurer. I did speak to Carla McAuliffe, the town accountant, a couple times in the last week, just because she updated me on I had a question, but she updated me on where the donation account is at, and we're at the end of the fiscal year in 6 days. Um, and we've really underspent this year. And I think roughly 1,000 of our $1,500 still sitting there. So, the more signs we approve tonight, if we'd approved all four, it would be $300.
Mhm.
We'd still be turning back almost half of our annual budget. And as you know, the more you turn back, the more difficult. We have a tiny budget as it is, but every time you turn back a lot of money, you get less.
Mhm.
So, with that in mind, um, I wonder how you would feel. Again, the only holdup on 32 Lattisquama, the Leahy Cottage, site of Patrick Salmon Homestead. I always keep wanting to say it Homestead, which is weird. Patrick Salmon Homestead, circa 1896. The only holdup there, thank you, Michelle Hokinson, is in E, that what, and I think to myself on some level, why oh why did I show that doggone photo? Because you remember in the photo it's Lahey, and on the sign that um, the homeowner currently has, it's Leahy, meaning that the E, instead of being in the fourth position of five, as it is on the historic photo, is in the second position of five on the plaque.
So
And
what's the proposal to
well, so what
not?
I would put to you, as it is, Carla, again, our very fine and so nice and kind and accommodating town accountant, said to me, look, because I was giving her a heads up with where we were at and what we expected in spending and or what I anticipated in spending. And she said, well, we have to go through a form and quote, encumber the money.
Mhm.
Because usually they only want to pay on delivery, but we have a mechanism to encumber, let's say, the full amount of the four signs um, with a little bit of paperwork prior to June 30th. So if we were to vote to approve the sign with the caveat that the chair needs to, um, get the research done or in consultation with the homeowner, resolve this issue of why is it Leahy or is it Lahey? If you're willing to approve it on that basis and trust me to get that resolved correctly, um, because what I'm thinking is I could call up the homeowner tomorrow and tell her this, and she could say, "Yeah, I don't care, Leahy, okay,
Yeah.
and we'll just go with that."
But
Because,
Yeah.
we would care as the commission. We
well,
want it to
no, I
be
mean,
historically
because we have,
accurate.
yeah, no, we have some basis and a pretty good argument to
Mhm.
say that we think it's what appears um, on the photo, because yours is the Leahy cottage, and this is clearly your house, right? Um, and the now it could be, by the way, that the person who spelled this,
Yeah.
who printed this out, just spelled it wrong. I mean, that's the other part of it. So what I would propose to do would, see if the homeowner, who again is a, former member of the historical commission, has
The documentation.
the documentation, and I suspect
Mhm.
she does. Um, and I'm now that I'm thinking about it, I'm willing to bet this is Maria Vagnini that
Mhm.
she's going to say to me, "Well, yeah, I've got it. I've done the deed research. It's Leahy." She's like Annie, a broker, so is familiar with deed research, um, and 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 will turn to me and say, "Well, that photo, that historic photo that you so stupidly showed at your meeting." Is misspelled. That's common enough. People misspelled crap in 1895 just as they do in 2026. So, um,
I'm in
and
favor of approving it pending you confirming
Mhm.
exact spelling so we can move
yeah,
forward financially with wrapping this up by the end of the year and encumbering the expense for all four
right.
Yes.
Right. That's
to
what
come
I'm
out of
looking to
this year's
do.
budget.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking to do.
Yeah.
So if you
Great
guys,
idea.
if you trust me to get the E placed in the proper spot,
Yes.
and again, because it is a replacement sign, I have a feeling that this has all been resolved. And if I had been as sharp-eyed as Michelle, I would have caught the discrepancy prior to the meeting
Hmm.
and called up
Yeah.
um, Ms. Magnini and clarified because I'm willing to bet she's got the proof. Any objection to that? Should we vote? Can we vote on that?
I think somebody needs to make a motion, right?
Okay, I'll make the motion because it's so complicated. I will make the motion that we approve a replacement sign for 32 Lattisquama Road with the wording Leahy Cottage, site of Patrick Salmon Homestead, circa 1896. So it's a slight variation of our usual verbiage. with the caveat that the chair is going to resolve the placement of the E in Leahy. And you're basically deputizing me to make a judgment that I've got it right. But again, it's a high confidence one because of the provenance of this sign.
Okay.
Second.
Thank you. That's the most complicated motion ever made. Seconded by Andy. We're almost done, friend. Roll call vote. Miller's aye. Grant,
Aye.
Annie,
Yes.
Michelle,
Yes.
Kelly.
Yes.
Wow. Thank you. 5-0. I'm going to move forward. I'm telling you, think about it. The abutment sign is up. The fence is going to get worked on. The tower, we're going to get an answer. We just approved 4 signs. I don't know. Am I allowed to say in a public meeting, I'm going to go have a cocktail now, even though it is. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you,
Oh,
Kevin.
the last thing I almost forgot. God almighty, that would have been, I would have blown the whole thing. Kelly O'Brien. I don't know, Kelly, if you want to say Kelly is not going to renew. You have life plans that are
Yeah, I have a second house in Medway, so we are fixing up this house in Southborough and moving to Medway. I anticipate it like end of the summer, early fall. So that's why I'm not renewing. But you can, if you need me to do research, I'm more than happy to do it.
Thank you.
I grew up here in
Thank you,
Southborough.
Kelly.
you may get a call, and I'm very appreciative, Kelly, of your service. And I thought this is a really lovely way to that your last meeting we can get this 24 East Main thing
It was
done,
appropriate.
and I think done right. And really the work that you did on that, and that you were willing to go into depth on both of those houses
It was my pleasure. I love doing that kind of stuff. So
was absolutely invaluable to me personally, and is now going to help me sleep better because this thing is driving me mad. So it's a nice way for you to go out, I think, on the Historical Commission with
I
our
agree.
thoughts. And,
Thank you.
best
Thanks,
of
Kelly.
luck with the move and everything that comes with that. And we will be in touch because your expertise and your sense of the history of this town, I think is really helpful, and that we're going to be hard pressed to replace you with someone who knows as much. So
Yeah, I'm fourth generation Southborough, so yeah, I know a little bit.
no, and it comes through, and it really,
Mhm.
there are times, especially when, someone like me who's like a green
Debutante.
Southborough in a lot of ways, this where I pick up stuff when I talk to people who've been around. So thank you so much. We're very grateful.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure.
Best of luck, Kelly.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Kelly.
Thank
All right.
you.
And with that, we'll take a motion to adjourn. Or you
So
just want to
moved.
stay? All right. Grant made the motion to adjourn. Is there a second? I think Kelly, you got to make the second.
All right, I make the second motion
All
to
right.
adjourn.
Roll call vote. Miller's aye. Grant,
Aye.
Annie,
Yes.
Michelle.
Yes.
The last word to Kelly O'Brien.
Yes.
Yes, we are adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Thank you for your
everyone.
patience.
Thank
Good luck
you.
with,
Bye,
good luck with the
everyone.
move, Kelly.
Thank you. It's
Good
gonna
night,
be a
everybody.
nightmare. Bye-bye.
Bye.